a CASA volunteer, handled a lot of cases, and is a mentor, has been a mentor for at least three or more.
This is my fourth one.
Four CASA volunteers, and really knows the ropes and is really puts a lot of energy into her work. And in addition to that, you are the program services director for CASA Montana. So Loretta works with programs throughout the state, and this project she's going to talk about tonight is something that is beginning to come to life with some other programs, but I think we're probably maybe the pilot for the state. And I'm not going to steal your thunder. And
That's all right. Go ahead.
But no, this is a really incredible program that we are adopting as part of the work we do, and I'm just going to let Loretta tell us all about it.
Okay. What I'm going to talk about is called Family Find and Engagement. Lots of our kids that have been in the system for a long time have lost contact with family. A lot of times that's happened not because the family planned it that way or because the kids are so bad that the family doesn't want to have contact with them. Lots of times it has just happened because the connections get farther and farther apart and kind of discouraged and that kind of thing. So Family Find is all about reuniting kids with family, or in the case of our brand new cases, which we've done too, is finding family as fast as we can for the kids so they don't spend more time in the system than is necessary. Family is the source of our strongest emotions. You know, it brings us the biggest anger, it brings us the biggest joys, but family is our heart and soul. Everything that we are because of family. Most of us define our identity by families, by the way our families love us or don't love us, or how we get along, what our families do, but we are all part of a family, and that family is, like I said, is our heart and soul. So when our kids lose their family, they lose a huge chunk of who they are. Also, when the family loses the child, the family loses a big chunk of who it is. There is a big hole in the hearts of grandparents, of aunts and uncles, of moms and dads when a child is lost to them. So this is really an important, it's really kind of my passion at this point, is getting these kids back into connections. One of the other reasons is as kids age out of the system, they need a support system. Our kids that age out that don't have anybody, because at 18 years old they're told, here's your clothes in a paper sack. We'll take you wherever you want to be, and you're there.
Does that happen even if they're still in high school?
No, they can stay. They have the choice, right, Bill? They can stay until they graduate from high school. But the day of graduation, if they graduate at 5 o'clock, at 6 o'clock they're dropped on the street.
Wow.
There is no support system for our kids that age out of care. Now, I shouldn't say exactly that, because if they're going to college, there's some extended care for some kids, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly what all that is.
Changing.
There's different financial assistance for that.
if they stay in college, but if they just decide to get a job or they don't know what they want to do or whatever, they're totally just dumped on the street. What happens to those kids? They become homeless because even though we maybe gave them a little bit of money and gave them some clothes, they don't have a support network.
Is that foster care kids too?
Oh, it's everybody.
If the foster
If the
parents.
system, if they're inside the system at 18 or at graduation, that's what happens.
Must be so hard for the foster parents.
And a lot of
They
times,
don't-
you know, the foster parents
I mean,
step
they
up
may
and,
still take them, but
Oh, yeah.
then they're
But
not
they don't get
but then
paid.
the foster parents don't get support
Right.
from them, right? So
Right,
Right.
but you.
but
you
we've
have the
got kids that are
Yeah.
not in foster families.
Yeah.
We've got kids in residential care,
resident,
Yeah.
you know.
What is, all right, residential care, what constitutes residential care? I mean, where are they?
They're in a group home. They are in a therapeutic residential facility.
okay.
Shodare is a
Yeah.
system like that. There's some therapeutic group homes. We have kids in Anaconda that are in a Galen or an Aware operated therapeutic group home. We have some kids here like Martha Stewart and Jan Shaw. Those are just group homes. But there are residential systems. Yellowstone Boys and Girls Ranch is a residential treatment place.
So, the kids that are in these kinds of places and turn 18 and age out, are they generally, in some reason or another, not eligible to do military or job corps or something if they're not going to college, or is there no move to try to place them in those sorts of things?
That depends on their social worker and their CASA.
Well, at 18, depends on them too.
At 18, it depends on them, but generally by the time that happens, somebody has actually said, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? But that doesn't mean they can. I have one case, the one I've had her for 5 years. When she ages out, she actually may not qualify for the military or job corps because if she functions at the level she functions now socially, she can't cut it.
Yeah.
She's plenty strong mentally. She just can't cut it socially. And we have lots of those kids. I'm not going to say it's the majority, but there's lots of those kids that will not go to college, will not do military, you know. So these kids, if they don't have a connection, if they don't have somebody to go back to, end up on the streets, end up in drugs, end up in jail because they had to go steal groceries for dinner tonight, you know, some stuff like that. So that's why it is so important that we connect them with somebody. And the broader that network is, the more likely they are to succeed.
But you start before they turn 18.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. And if we could, and as we get this all moving, I think we will find a lot of our families right off the bat. One case that Carolyn and I share, Carolyn's her attorney and I'm the CASA for that, came into care about 1.5 years ago. She's 14 years old. At that point, she only had a dad. Mom had kind of disappeared off the face of the earth. And, she had a grandma and a grandpa. She had dad and grandma and grandpa. Both were abusive. And so when she came into care, we took her on as one of the pilot cases and we went, okay, so let's find family. Within 48 hours, we had a maternal aunt and uncle and a maternal grandfather. We didn't have mom yet, but we had a maternal grandparent and a maternal aunt and uncle. And when the social worker called grandpa's work, and within 2 hours, within 20 minutes, he was calling back to the social worker. And within a couple hours, I had talked to him and the aunt because they were just going, "What's going on? We're so excited. She's got a home here. You know, we've gone, Jenna, wherever you are, happy birthday." For years, because they had just lost her. They didn't know where they were. That was a year ago in April or so. She's been able to visit these parent or this aunt and uncle and these grandparents. They've come to visit her. Mom surfaced about, well, it was Mother's Day this year. Mom surfaced on Mother's Day, and Grandpa and Aunt had not seen Mom in 7 or 8 years. Mom, the last time they had any contact with Mom had called and said, I need to borrow a couple $1,000s. Well, she had a drug problem. And Grandpa said, "What do you need it for?" And she said, "Because I need to fix my car." He said, "Do you have an estimate?" He never heard another word from her. And that was like 6 or 7 years ago. And she called the sister and said the same thing. Sister replied the same way, and she just disappeared off the face of the earth. The grandpa was a policeman, and he actually was checking some of their networks to see if she had died. And he actually suspected the dad of killing the mom. But they didn't know that, you know. But Mom has surfaced, so my CASA case has a mom, and they're working therapeutically through phone calls. Mom lives in Idaho. And she has an aunt and uncle in Phoenix. She has a grandpa in Oregon. And she has a foster family here that is probably going to become her guardians. So with Family Find, she has family, you know, 7 or 8. She's got an aunt with 3 kids, an uncle, a whole bunch of uncles' family has adopted her. So she's got this huge support network. So if she ages out, and she's not alone. And when she decides it's time to get married, she's got some people to invite.
True.
But if you said the aunt lives in Phoenix, so if they were willing to take her, could through the legal system, could we put her
Yes.
in a place that's not in Montana?
Yes.
Okay, good.
They do what they call an ICPC, and I don't know what those letters stand for. It's an interstate compact of some sort.
Okay.
And so they actually went through that, because before that we got this foster family for her in January or something, she was living in a group home. Not because she was a bad kid, but because there was nobody else satisfactory. And that was, if the foster family had not said we will be her guardians because we love her, she would be in Arizona at this point.
But wouldn't the family have taken precedence, or did they not want to have her?
This is a consensus agreement. She did not want to go to Phoenix. She's been in school here.
Sure.
She wants to stay in school here. She had her activities.
And her friends.
She's doing so well right now. She's just doing really, really well. I talked to the foster parents last night, and it was just, you know, just as good as it can be having a 14-year-old. But this is a good 14-year-old. I mean, her grades are A's and B's. You know, she's going to school. She isn't out partying, that kind of stuff. So she's a good kid. So.
You mentioned guardians, and my understanding is that that's the step short of adoption, but I don't really know what guardianship is. Can you explain that?
Bill might be able to do this better than I can.
Well, the decision-making powers are transferred to the guardian. In the child's in state custody, that's the department that's the guardian, and it's the department that makes all the decisions. In a guardianship arrangement, those powers are transferred to the guardians, and the state withdraws, dismisses, and is out of the picture.
That means the CASA would be out too then.
Yes.
What's that?
That means the CASA would be out too then.
Yes, exactly. But what does remain in effect is that guardianships can be subsidized by the department, and so a subsidy may remain in effect, but the department is otherwise out of the picture.
But the guardian is not committing to any personal financial responsibility for the child.
Yes, they
Oh,
are.
yeah, yeah, you know, and I don't know exactly all the technical details. If it's, well, I probably shouldn't even try to explain it because it'll just confuse everybody, but if the child meets certain criteria, a guardianship can be provided. If they don't meet that criteria, no guardianship, or no subsidy is what I was trying to say, is available to, and the guardian are responsible for.
I think one of the biggest differences in this case anyway is that she can be placed with these people permanently and they can be her forever parents, but we didn't have to terminate rights on her mother and her dad. In an adoption, those rights have to be terminated. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah.
That makes sense, yeah.
And she really, at some point, she wants to be able to have a relationship with her dad. It's not there yet. Dad has hurt her so deeply that she is not ready to have him in her life, but she didn't want to cut that rope. And because mom was about 2 days from having her parental rights cut off when she showed up. It was a little bit longer than that, but it was like this much time before the court would have terminated mom's rights, just because mom was nowhere. And now she has mom in her life, and the foster family is really open to those connections and encourages those connections. So that's why there's a guardianship rather than an adoption in this case. I put some sticky notes on the table. I want everybody just to have one. You only need one.
Give us a whole stack.
I just spread them out so everybody gets one. I didn't count them. So I want you to write down on that piece of paper how big your family is.
Right now.
Are you going to define that for us before we write?
How big's your family?
Oh my God.
Just a number.
Yeah, just a number. Just a number.
What you count as your family.
Well, that's your definition.
Yeah, I know. You're asking for a number.
I am, and
Yeah.
I, you know.
A number, okay.
Yep.
That's including your husband's family.
Oh, yeah, I hadn't even got it for them yet. Yeah. I was still thinking through my side. And got to his side.
And you don't have to be exact. Just, is it 10? Is it 100? Where's it at? Okay. Everybody got a number on their paper?
No. It's a pretty hard question.
Don't think so hard. I didn't mean for it to be a mental exercise at this time of the day. One of the first questions you ask when you start, I guess before I go there, I want to tell you that there is a new law in the state of Montana that says we have the ability, the department has the ability to find family without the permission of the parents. And that was passed in this last legislature. Before that, the parents had to release a list of names of grandma and grandpa. Well, the case that we were just talking about, that dad would never have told us about mom's family. He wanted nothing to do with them, and he didn't want his daughter to have anything to do with them. So we would not have ever found that family had we not just gone ahead and looked. So, that law is there, so we have the ability to go searching.
Say about the law again. I guess I don't understand what would have kept you from searching in the first place.
We had to have permission from the parents. The parents had to give us permission to talk to grandma and grandpa
Oh.
and find family. If
Right.
they didn't like grandma and grandpa,
You never know about them.
we wouldn't know about it. And now the law allows us to find grandma and grandpa or aunt and uncle
Okay.
or whoever without the permission of the parents.
That's good.
Yeah.
It is good.
Because, you know, there's a lot of those young parents out there that are, like, say, towards the grandparents. Well, I'm not gonna let you see them. You'll never see them again.
Right.
Because of something they didn't like between them and the parent or the grandparent, which totally leaves the grandparents no rights to the grandkids. Can I ask you why there isn't a grandparents' law here?
You can ask. I don't know that I have an answer. There is, in the state of Montana, so you know, there is a family registry. So that if you want, and Bill can maybe tell us who to call, otherwise I can find out and then tell Katie or, but you can put your name on this registry, and if for some reason a child that you've identified, you know, your granddaughter, for instance, is in danger of being abused or is removed from the home, you will be the first people contacted. Bill, the Family Services runs the family registry, right? So that if the kids are abused, grandma and grandpa can get on this list and they're already pre-approved to
Right.
take that child.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure who you call, but I bet we can find out. But there is that registry. I don't know exactly what you mean by a grandparent law, but
I think probably, are you speaking of one of those laws that actually grants specific rights to, sort of almost like parental rights to
Or
grandparents?
visitation, because,
Secondarily?
you know,
I thought
like
those were
with the
set up
clients
in
that I've worked with, that, you know, that was a lot of stuff that I've seen, even now, that I have boys that are in their 20s. The world out there is just nuts, the kids. It's sad. I mean, it's like, well, my mom pissed me off, so I'm not gonna let her see the grandparents. You know, and I'm like, what's that gotta do between the grandparent and the grandchild?
it's just a weapon.
Yeah, it is.
I thought you would have to do something legal as a grandparent.
Yeah.
If you, well, not a law, but you go to a court and say, I wanna see my grandkids and this is the reason why and blah, blah, blah. That's
You
what
don't
I
have- you
do.
don't have
Parents
no
are
rights in
confident
Montana.
that grandparents don't have rights.
Yeah, we have
There's
no
other
rights.
parents
in
are granting
Montana.
them rights.
Yeah,
Judge can't
California
just
has
make
grandparent law.
Yeah,
There's
Now,
no
I don't
government
know.
recourse for that.
I honestly don't know why there's not a grandparent law, or if there is a grandparent law, I don't know about it. So, so we start looking for family, and one of the reasons that families have been disconnected over time is that mom and dad are just both really bad parents. You know, so the kids are taken away. I mean, if they can provide minimal sufficient level of care, the kids should be allowed there. But mom and dad can't, and the kids are gone. So, what is our most frequent generalization? It is that the apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. And so, if mom and dad are both screw-ups, God, that must mean grandparents are both screw-ups too. All four grandparents must really be bad, or mom and dad would be a lot better.
They wouldn't be that bad.
Right. And so, but that's how the system has worked. You know, that if this person is bad, well, he came from somewhere. Kids learn what they live with, and they grow up to be like this, you know, they must have learned it somewhere. So we have pushed family away because you're probably just like the parents. So we don't want you. But Kevin Campbell, who is the person who trained a bunch of people in Montana over the last winter on Family Fine, says, think about the craziest person in your family. The absolute craziest one you have, or the one you really don't want to be around at all. Now, do you want to be judged by that person? Sorry, I was just thinking out loud. So I think that's exactly the reaction we wanted. You know, God, no. Sorry. And so we have to change our thinking about all the rest of the family, because family is not like, the rest of the family is not necessarily like mom or dad or both. Okay? So we want to change that. This is some more of Kevin's philosophies. The kid belongs to the family. The state makes terrible parents. We all know that. And it's okay to let the family be okay. Find the strength in the family. Somebody there is probably okay. And a lot of times we might have a kid who has, let's say is bipolar. And he's blown out of 6 foster homes because he can't maintain on his medications. You call Aunt Sue up and you say, Johnny is giving us some trouble. And she says, is he bipolar? Well, why do you ask? Well, because Uncle Joe and Grandma Sally and, you know, all of these other people have that tendency too. The family already knows how to deal with it because they are already dealing with it. The apple doesn't fall very far from the tree. So, let the family be okay. Also, avoid ain't it awful. And this is just generally in CASA work. Don't worship the problem. Keep moving. Move on. Define the problem, but just solve it and move on. Don't just keep going. He's bipolar, so he's going to blow out of this family. So he moves. Oh, he's bipolar. Do something about it, fix it, and go on. Don't leave these kids stranded. Every day in their lives is a crisis. When they don't have permanency, every day is a crisis. Therapy can't fix most of the problems the kids are experiencing. Family can fix it. Therapy can't. I think, now, I'm not positive this is a Dr. Kolstad idea, but I think that's where I heard it. She said that oftentimes a child will not develop emotionally after it's removed from a family. So if a child is removed at like the age of 4, it will be very difficult for that child to move beyond that outside the family because of all of the disruptions that go on in their lives. So therapy can't fix that. A child needs family. He needs love. He needs to be where he can develop, where he can make the contacts, where he can be accepted. Gentle pressure relentlessly applied. That's kind of like the drop of water. You know, the kids get told that you can't live here and you can't live here and you're not good enough to be in a family and nobody loves you, and all of those little drops of water that just keep hitting that kid and keep beating him down in the ground farther and farther. And that's just gentle pressure, relentlessly applied. And we have to do something to stop the pressure and start rebuilding that child and his connections, because that hasn't been done for a long time. And then just keep moving, keep moving, keep moving. Don't stop. And that's why Helena has a family find program, is because we decided to keep moving. We have a program that can't exactly say it's endorsed by the department, but it's approved by the department. But we move on our own. We keep our social workers apprised of what's going on. We tell them, you know, that we found this many these members of the family. Do you have any objections to us contacting them? That keeps so if they know if there's, you know, a really bad guy in the family, that keeps us from contacting that person in the beginning. It doesn't keep him from being outside the family or outside the connections forever. We had a little boy in Billings when we were doing the training. One of the Great Falls groups had taken this boy who was in Billings at I don't remember if he was in a residential placement or whether he was in a foster home there, but the connection he most wanted to make was with an older brother. Well, the older brother was a dingbat and, you know, really not worthy of the worship that this younger boy was giving him. But that's the connection that this young child wanted. And the department had cut it off because the older brother was a dingbat. You know, you're not good for this kid, we're not going to let you see him. So what did that do to the vision of the younger brother? What did the younger brother start to do with the older brother?
Idolize him even more,
Exactly.
probably.
Exactly. And so what happened eventually was that the social workers made arrangements for the older brother to make phone calls to the younger brother, because that's pretty safe. You know, somebody can supervise a phone call, push the button, and the phone call's over. Where, you know, if there's a visit, supervised visits are safe, but this is a good way to start. So they set these phone calls up with the older brother. Well, the older brother made the first one. He forgot about the second one. I think he might have made the third one, but I think 4, 5, and 6 he forgot. So now who's at fault here? All the phone calls are set up. You know, the social workers got the young man there ready. All of a sudden it's the big brother that's the problem. It's not the department, it's not the CASA, it's who the blame belongs to. You know, so we don't necessarily keep the bad guys out of the process. We're careful about the contact, but we don't keep them out of the process.
So does the department then call your organization and say, I mean, how do we as CASA
Well, it's,
figure out? We are part of CASA.
oh, the,
Family
family fine.
Family Find is, I don't know, an initiative that we've
Yeah.
taken on, or whatever you
Oh,
want to call it.
CASA
But it's,
program.
it's a
it's part
CASA
of
program.
CASA.
So once the case gets to CASA, then it's.
When
it's-
exactly
okay.
do you start looking for family? Right, as soon as there's a case, or how?
Right now, we're still only working 6 cases in the Helena CASA program. Hamilton is working on 4 cases, and I think I'm probably going to go to Conrad and start a program within the next month. But we chose kids that have been in the system a long time, and most of our kids are getting close to aging out, aren't they, Bill? Brandon and Ricky, within a couple of years.
Well, within, yeah, I'm trying to think, the youngest is 12. We've got
So you're
a
trying to
12-year-old.
build up a support network for them before.
Right.
they
So
age
they're
out.
not.
With the youngest one that's 12, I think we're looking, actually, the ultimate goal, if everything goes in place, is a placement for the child. You know, somebody in the family will really make a connection and really want to raise this kid. The first goal is to make the connections. But our 12-year-old, we'd really like to find somebody to raise him the rest of the way. Ricky is not gonna, Ricky's gotten he's in a placement now that is encouraging family support, but he'll never go to family probably. He's 16 and a half or something like that.
I had a kind of a haunting experience today. I don't know if I can tell the story. Let me.
Okay, we'll go on and then we'll figure it out. So, what we're trying to do is build connections, and I'm somewhere here. And one of the little girls that I work with, name is Sophie. This is a connection map. And when we started, Sophie was by herself. There wasn't anybody else in her world.
How old is she?
She's 14 right now. I have a lot of 14-year-olds. I don't know exactly why, but that seems to be my age. I started with Sophie when she was 9. Okay? When I started with her, there wasn't anybody to say goodnight. There wasn't anybody to say I love you. There wasn't anybody. She had nobody in the world. When I made the phone calls to see, once or twice a week to see if she was okay, because eventually I became her grand friend. She wanted me to be her grandmother, but I couldn't, but I became her grand friend. I'm backing away from that a little bit at this point, but right now there's Sophie or at that point there was Sophie in the middle. Now we knew she had a brother, and we knew a half brother, and we knew where he was. And there was actually an attempt at one point to place her in that family, and some things happened in the family, not Sophie, but in the family, that made that placement not possible. And we tried another family, and some things happened there, and then she ended up in residential care, and then we tried a couple more foster families, and now she's back in residential care. So when we started going through Sophie's connections, all we knew was that someplace she had a brother, and we knew where